Hello, welcome to a Wednesday night edition of the Buddy Martin Show. I am Buddy Martin, and this is my show. We do this 4 times a week and sometimes more. Tonight, a special night. We have our outstanding panel of guests, including Peek Wilbur, who will join us and tell us how she got Steve Spurrier to talk so much about FSU not becoming a member of the SEC. She'll be here along with Scott Carter, University of Florida. Oh, yeah, there's a lot of preparation going on, getting ready for the Olympics. Yes, it starts, folks. It's underway. 40 athletes going there. And we'll check in with our bureau chief, a guy who carried us these last 3 or 4 years. Kyle Curtis will catch us up with information he's got, the series he's got going on right now about ranking the SEC team. So stay tuned. Right around the corner, it's going to be time for our friends and neighbors and for you. Come join us to be a part of it. Messages on our message boards, and listen up. The Buddy Martin Show is now on the air.
For Buddy Martin, call him up and tell him what you're thinking, but be kind because he's doing the best he can.
Better, stronger, faster.
Mama says that alligators are ornery because they got all them teeth but no toothbrush.
What if the voice calls while you're gone?
Take a message.
Bye!
You ready, champ?
I'm ready for this my whole life.
I'm incapable of small talk. But that's why you love me, right?
Kind of intimidating to be in the presence of so many great athletes.
Again, welcome to the program. I'm Buddy Martin, and tonight, what a night. We dodged a bullet, so to speak, in a way, and not so much another. Big tree fell on our house in Ocala. Brendan Martin was right there, and it came within inches of hitting him. Close call. Thankfully, he's okay. The house is in disrepair. You can always replace houses and not people. Thank you, Laura, for taking care of Brenda during that time. It's a happy occasion. It's Stella's 12th birthday, our granddaughter. Brendan's daughter is 12 years old today. She took a trip to a concert in Atlanta. She was back, wishing Stella a very happy birthday. As for us, well, it's time to start thinking about ball because right around the corner, it's here next week. Gator football practice starts, and this weekend, it's the Olympics. And meanwhile, it's still talking season, they tell me. And this person got Steve Spurrier to talk about it. Let's welcome back to the program one of our favorite people, somebody who always brings it when she comes, and she does her own podcast, one of the best around. Peek Inside the Gators, Peek Wilbur. What's up, Allie?
Hello, how are ya?
Hey, except for having a tree on the house, we're doing okay.
That is not good, but I'm glad to hear it sounds like it could have been worse, so I'm glad it wasn't.
I think that's tree number 5 on that house. So seem to have it. But anyway, like you say, you replace houses, right?
You can.
You can't replace people.
That's true.
Well, let's start. Well, before we get into your interview with Steve Spurrier, a very good one. Congratulations. What he had to say about FSU. You don't hear that very often, if ever. It's an interesting time. We're poised for next week's practices to start. Some of these players we've been talking about will be on the field. We won't get to see much of them, but some, get a better idea. And then we've got the Olympics starting, and there. Last time I looked, 34 athletes in Florida University. Was that correct? Does that sound right?
I've seen 34 and 37, so I'm not sure, but a lot. And that doesn't include the coaches. There's a lot of
I think 40-something, 41 with the coaches or something.
Yeah, UF affiliated coaches that are involved as well, which is very cool.
What are you looking forward to in the Olympics involving Gators?
Well, it doesn't involve I guess it does involve the Gators because Leanne Wong is an alternate, but gymnastics is a big fan favorite in this house because my little girls are gymnasts themselves. Yeah. So we will for sure be watching that with bated breath. I grew up a fan of just the Olympics in general, right? Like my dad was always obsessed. We watched as a family. I love swimming and track. I think they're It's always so fun to watch, always includes so many Gators. We've watched some really cool moments the last couple Olympics with Gator athletes in both of those sports. But I'm excited. It's hard to find a sport I'm not excited about. I mean, I guess maybe like trampolining or something, but there's going to be see TV all day, every day for almost 3 straight weeks, which is pretty awesome during like the dead part of the summer.
And then we get out of that, we go right into football. So that's which we'll talk about, because I have a different take on the Miami-Florida game than almost everybody else. And it could be just my own prejudice, whatever. But I'm going to tell you about that. But let's talk about your home run that you hit with the head ball coach on your show. I think you still got another part to play on it, right? Don't you have more from Coach?
I think we're breaking it up into 3 parts. So this part was conference realignment, which is kind of a hot button topic really everywhere right now. And so we're running that first. We're talking to him a little bit about NIL. And then we'll talk about the expectations for this season. And I mean, the old ball coach, he doesn't pull any punches. He says exactly what he thinks, and he's earned that right? To say exactly what he thinks. But I was a little caught off guard when he said he felt like Florida State belonged in the SEC. But I also think he's just the ultimate competitor. He wants the best teams surrounding his team. The more competition, the better for him. He is not Lincoln Riley at USC, who's saying, I'd like to play Notre Dame, but I'll remove him from my schedule if it helps us win a national championship.
Yeah, right.
Spurrier would keep him on the schedule.
Yeah, I mean, he threw a little stat on you there that's kind of good that people haven't made of. He said that, I think he said of the 12 years, 10 of his teams would have ranked in the top 10. Mm-hmm. So if they had the playoff system,
he would have been there so often.
10 straight years, or not straight year, but 10 years. Yeah. So that's pretty amazing. When you put it in that context, it is quite amazing.
And it makes me think that going forward, we're going to have to, with baseball, we always say in the steroid era or in the wood bat era, or in the, we refer to periods of time kind of to, defend our best players of different. I wonder if we're going to do that for the playoffs, because think about how much harder it is to win a national championship back when the AP polls had to vote it that way than it's going to be when 12 teams get into a playoff. And maybe we do put an asterisk at a certain point. Are we going to compare those eras differently?
Almost anything you say, you could put an asterisk on.
Yeah.
And here's one. I was having a conversation with Shane Matthews. Somebody else talked about their all-time greatest running backs.
Yeah.
How we tend to skew that because we look at what they did as a pro. What they did as a pro has little to do with what they did as a collegiate. And I'll give you one, which will be considered heresy by people.
Okay.
Kevin Smith was a terrific player, but he was not a Hall of Famer as a college player. He got his fame from playing for the Cowboys, becoming the NFL's all-time leading rusher. And now I'm not knocking him. Don't get me wrong. I mean, I saw these guys play. There are other players I know. Jack Youngblood's a good example. I saw Jack Youngblood play.
Yeah.
He was outstanding in defensive lineman from Northwest Florida, and he grew to be a big, massive guy. He was a great pro player, Pro Bowl player, played with a broken leg in a championship game. And he was really a good player.
Yeah.
But we talk about all-time greatest players in college. I just have a hard time putting him in that group. Mm-hmm. And there have been so many great ones. Like Shane talks about, he says, what running backs should go in there. You could probably think of three or four running backs. Fred Taylor, he thinks, belongs in that group, whatever. And then I said, well, what do you do about these guys when you have a player who tells you the greatest player I've ever played with at Florida unequivocally was, and he throws a name out there that probably wouldn't register, Larry Dupree, the running back from McClenny.
Yeah.
I happen to know about because I watched him play high school ball.
Yeah.
When he wasn't getting recruited by Florida.
Yeah.
He was a great player, but he wouldn't make your top 20 among most Gator fans.
Right.
Tommy Shannon, who played with Spurrier as quarterback, told me on several occasions, I don't care what they say. The greatest player I ever saw for was Larry Dupree. So what do you do with someone like that?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
but I mean, it's all a subjective thing. I
Sure.
think you almost have to go by eras, don't you? Just
You
what
do.
era
I
they were
think
in.
so. But so now we're moving into the 12-team playoff era.
Yeah. What's that going to be like?
What is it going to be like? And it is cool to think, like, I mean, Spurrier and Urban's teams would have been in there every year, which is wild to think about.
Yeah. It makes you realize how rich the experience has been for these Gator fans. Unfortunately, they think that's the normalcy.
Well, I was going to say, should we tell that to Tim Brando, though, who says our success was just a splash in the pan and we're greedy and we don't have a good history?
Okay, that's fine. He never has to show his face around here. He didn't do games. He can say what he wants to. Brando's okay. I mean, everybody's got an opinion. Have your opinion. I don't have a problem with it, but authenticity is relevant. I mean, it's who said it, what do they know, what kind of credibility do they have? When Spurrier speaks, you just can't doubt it. He's been there, he's seen it and done it, right? Yeah. Other people just have opinions. Now, speaking of which, I have heard numerous people talk about how critical this Miami-Florida game was. Some say the biggest opening game in the history of Florida. I mean, people that really know what they're talking about say this is a crucial game. And I'm thinking, I don't know about that. I've seen a lot of opening games in my time. Yeah. I can name 2 or 3, but I get where they're coming from. But when you say this is a make or break game for the Florida program, when did Miami become Alabama?
Yeah.
I mean, you know what I mean? It's not like, it's a game you want to win and you need to win, but it's not the be all end all. And you say we lose the game, but what if they come back and win 5 SEC games? The SEC games are more important, right?
The SEC games are more important. And if they lose to Miami and they win 8 games afterwards, it's not going to matter at all. But I think the reason that people feel like it's so important, and I am one of those people that think that this is maybe the most important game on our schedule.
Tell me why.
It doesn't have anything to do with Miami being the best team on our schedule. They're not. There's probably 6 games on our schedule at least that are harder, but that's kind of the point. If they don't beat Miami, knowing there's at least 6 SEC teams harder on the schedule, it becomes harder and harder to figure out where the wins are going to come from. So I think you start out the gate strong with a big win against Miami. You're going to beat Samford. You're going to beat UCF. You're going to maybe beat Tennessee. It's going to be the kickoff to some huge momentum. But the first 6 games are easier than the last 6 games. So if you can't take care of business in the front end, it's hard for me to believe you're going to be able to take care of business in the back end.
But based on what we know now, I'm going to come at you and say we don't know a lot.
Sure.
There's a lot of really great players we never heard of yet.
Sure. And there are. But if you look at where these teams, are falling in the preseason polls, where these teams finished last year, objectively, the back half of the schedule is harder than the front half of the schedule. Now, could injuries change that? Could surprises, along the way change that? Absolutely. But right now, on paper, the best we can do tells us that the second half of the season is harder than the first. You have 9 months, essentially, to prepare for that Miami game. It's at home. You have a quarterback who is a returning starter for you and a super senior. You should have all the momentum going into this game. So if you can't, where I look at Mario Cristobal and Billy Napier as on the same seat right now. Cristobal has 1 more win than Napier does in the same amount of time, and he plays in the ACC, right? So they're both on a warm seat, let's call it. I think you have got to take care of business against somebody that they're seeing as in the same boat. It's a leg up recruiting wise, and it's a great kickoff to the start of the season. It's recoverable if you lose that game, but it's very hard to find wins later on if you're not getting them in the beginning.
I hear what you're saying. Logically, it makes sense that way. But we don't want what we're dealing with here yet. Some of the
Yeah.
teams we have projected to be really good may
Yeah.
not be.
For sure.
And
For sure.
remember, this is dog eat dog. These guys are playing each other. Every time you talk about your team having a problem in some area, every team in the SEC's got a problem. It's
But
not
this is talking
Florida.
season, right? This is what we do in July.
I understand that. I'm not saying that it's not a good conversation. It is, but I'm going to do something I rarely do. I'm going to put part of it on ESPN and Paul Feinbaum
Okay.
because, it took Paul a long time to even consider Billy worth a crap as a coach. I've
Sure.
had conversations with him, about it. And Paul doesn't know. I mean, Paul didn't see practice. He didn't see cover Florida games. He
Sure.
takes a shot. He's knowledgeable and takes a shot at a guy. And I get it. But the fact is that now all of a sudden, ever since it was announced, I'm just saying this now. I'm not trying to promote conspiracy. Ever since ESPN has announced they're coming with game day to Florida, Miami,
Mm-hmm.
all of a sudden the tone of things about Florida and Billy Napier have changed. And it's become this Armageddon game.
Yeah.
People.
Well,
Why?
they got to build the storyline, right?
Why? Well, would it have anything to do with the fact that they're promoting viewership? I think so. I mean, I'm just saying. I'm not saying it's conspiratorial or crooked or whatever, but let's put it in perspective. Why wasn't it a huge game 8-9 months ago? I didn't hear much talk about it, but now it is. Anyway, it's this is just a take, and I'm going to be one of those obstinate ones who says it's not a make or break game. It's an important game. There are other big games. If Florida loses to Miami and wins this next 5 games, things will be just fine in that regard. They still got to get to the halfway point.
Sure. But you want to start out winning begets.
Sure, everybody wants to, but let me remind you of a game. Remember Utah?
Yeah.
Boy, if they get past Utah, they're going to have a great year, right? What happened? They beat Utah. Didn't have a great year.
Yeah, but imagine had they lost it, it would have been
Not had they, but the fact is they didn't. They won it, and we didn't get the payoff, right?
Right.
I'm just saying.
I understand what you're saying. And I think at the end of the season, if Florida finishes 8-4, we won't look back at Miami as being the bigger game. We will be the biggest game. We will be excited about some of these other wins we picked up along the way. Right. But I think we are in a season where the next game is the biggest game for Coach Napier and for this team.
True. Yeah.
But you could make a statement by winning your very first game against a coach.
No doubt about it. No doubt about it. You can make a statement.
There will be so many recruits in that stand that both those teams fight for. It'll ensure that your swamp stays rocking for another game because the second a first loss happens, kind of deflates the atmosphere in the stadium a little bit. I think it's very important to win this first game, and I think
I didn't say it wasn't important.
Yeah.
I didn't ever say it wasn't important. What I said was it's not the most important opening game in Florida football history, which I've heard people say.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we live in, the moment a lot of the time. I don't think it's the biggest game in Florida football history. I'd say it's the biggest opener of Napier's career.
Without a question, probably the biggest in 20 years, I guess. The Spurrier didn't have one like that.
No, because we always open with easier teams at the very beginning. During the Spurrier era, we got our big ones a little bit down the road, but I think for multitude of reasons, this is very big. And it's not the biggest in Florida football history, but it's the biggest of the Napier era. It's
all right. I'll go with you on that. I'll go with you on that. And by the way, you mentioned recruiting. All of a sudden, things are taking an uptick here. You're starting to get these players coming in here, and now Vernell Brown III comes in, and boy, the ratings jump up. Now we're talking about other players that look like they're going to be a good chance of coming here. You keep up with recruiting more than I do. I'm told these next few days are also something else may pop, and the things are starting to happen. And they get back a coach that they thought they'd lost, who's their best recruiter, right?
such an interesting concept to me. And I can't tell you, you probably have heard the same things that I have, that so many people behind closed doors has said that Joe Hamilton is one of the best recruiters on the staff. We are so lucky to have him back. And I 100% believe that, but I also find it odd that one of our very best recruiters isn't an on the field coach. That is pretty rare, right? That's generally your on the field coaches are your best recruiters. But he did go to Texas.
Maybe under the new rules they won't be able to. Just okay. Did you hear the news about they okayed more scholarships? The NCAA. Oh,
yes,
yeah.
and it's going up to 105. But that's kind of to combat them saying that they want to get rid of walk-ons, and it essentially is to keep them from paying players that are not scholarship players an exorbitant amount of money, which essentially is another scholarship, right? So it's kind of regulating in that. I'm pretty excited about baseball getting all full rides, more scholarships.
That has been that since I played baseball in Florida, which is 200 years ago. They fully used to get like 2.5 scholarships.
Oh yeah.
One guy got the books, one guy got the meal. I mean, you had to split up it's like the fishes and the loaves. They get handing out. Now they're going to actually, and these players they're getting they're drawing some fans, and the game has gotten bigger.
I'm so excited. I think I've always thought it was absurd that they're cutting these little scholarships up with a knife and fork, essentially, to bring these kids in. It's going to keep, if you've noticed in the last couple of years, we're getting some of the top talent out of high school that's going to college instead of going straight to the league. And having all of these full rides is going to help continue that trend. I want to say the top 10 baseball players in the draft this year came out of college instead of coming out of high school. That's a new trend, but it's great. Like our college baseball improves when our very top players aren't going straight to the pros. So I think it was a good decision, but I cannot tell you how many people are so excited behind closed doors that Joe Hamilton is back. I know Texas A&M thought they pulled off a coup when they stole him, 11 months ago or how long it was. So this is 6 months ago, I guess, a big pickup for the Gators, and they've got the Grill in the Ville this weekend. They expect a lot of big names in town for that. So that is an important time for a lot of recruits to kind of talk to each other and get in Gainesville and really kind of get to know the program and each other. So there's good things happening, but I think there's a lot of recruits that are in a wait and see pattern, and great. Let's win a few games at the beginning of the year. And then hopefully they're committing left and right.
Yeah. And they're spreading the wealth over so many other sports, baseball, basketball, gymnastics, and so on. Everything is good. And the guy who knows a lot about that is standing by in the orange and blue room, is going to join us and coach us up on the athletes going to the Olympics, the great Scott Carter. We'll go get him in just a minute. First, I want to tell you about the sponsor of this program, Meldon Law. I talked to Jeffrey a couple of weeks ago. He's in Europe having a great vacation. Meldon Law is one of the official law firms for the University of Florida. They do many good things in the community. They're sponsors of many programs. They're heavy behind Florida Victorious. And Jeffrey's a Gator through and through. Just attended his, matter of fact, it's right here, his Scholar Athlete Award dinner. It's the 25th anniversary of his gala, celebrating the Scholar Athletes of Florida. And that night was quite special. And he's been doing this for a long time. He's very involved with the program. He's also a lawyer. I have to remind him sometimes. He starts talking, Jeffrey, don't you want to talk about law? Oh, yeah. Yeah, we do have a new office in Williston, now Gainesville, Ocala, Lake City. So it's all good. The Meldon Law firm is your needs. If you want to know, do you need counseling, a second opinion on your lawsuit that's not going your way? Give them a call, Meldon Law. They'll help you out. Meldon Law, they won't back down, and neither will this guy. I've known him a long time. I've never seen Scott Carter back down, especially when it came to some plate of food. What's up, Scotty?
Hey, buddy. How are you? You got me?
Man, good to see you. Say hello to Allie.
Hey, Allie.
Hey, Scott. How are you?
Having a good summer?
Having a great summer. Driving all the kids all the places. I'm a chauffeur.
I know what that's like. But it's fun.
It's a good time right now, Scott, with the Olympics starting, football around the corner. I know you follow all these other sports. Al and I were just saying What a pleasure right now to be able to spend the rest of the summer pretty much watching some terrific athletes. And I know I just saw a picture of who did I see a picture of? Snoop Dogg and Leanne Wong, I think. Snoop Dogg's got official.
That's a natural pairing. I mean, I could see them hanging out on a Friday night. Yeah.
Oh, every time I see Snoop Dogg, I say, "Where's Leanne?" What the heck? You know how that goes.
Oh, yeah. I mean, but Snoop Dogg, isn't he like going to carry the torch over there? I saw a funny
He's
tweet.
got a big role in it.
Somebody was like, Snoop Dogg representing the U.S. holding a lit object. Perfect.
Yeah. You know who's carrying the flag, Allie, don't you?
Yes. Okay. So LeBron is carrying it, right? And Coco as well.
That's correct. Yes.
Pretty cool.
Pretty cool is that, right?
Very cool.
Scott, can you? We were just talking about the number of athletes that we think are there from Florida. We've seen a couple of numbers. One that counted coaches and one that didn't. I saw 34 as one point as the number of athletes, and someone told me the number went to 41 when you added the coaches. What do you have for that?
I think our official count is 40. I don't think we're counting Katie Ledecky because she obviously never competed for Florida.
Gotcha.
And while she was a coach, she was a volunteer. So I think they're counting the staff coaches who are there, and of course the athletes. So it is an all-time high for Florida. I think it stands as like the third or fourth in the country. I think Stanford.
I just saw it.
Yeah, Stanford has the most because they have so many of those sports that a lot of schools in the South.
I think it was fourth. I think that's what I saw. It was fourth. Yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of Gators over in Paris, and there's always something to watch. Some of them are big names like Caleb Dressel, Grant Holloway, Leanne Wong, and then there's a lot of athletes that are on campus that are representing their countries. So it'll be interesting to see who. But it's the one year where the Olympic athletes it's their spotlight.
What's the best story out there for Florida? Which one?
Wow, I think there's several. I mean, I think to me, Caleb Dressel, he's a veteran now, and he took a year and a half off since the last Olympics. He had a baby, kind of just lived normal. He needed to get away from it. So I'll be curious to see, what he does in Paris, if he can kind of recapture some of the magic that he had, in Tokyo. So that's one. Grant Holloway, of course, in the hurdles. He's going to be the favorite. I think, I'll be surprised if he doesn't win gold. He just seems to be really peaking. And then, the others, I think, like we just mentioned, Katie Ledecky. I mean, this is her fourth Olympics. And if you watch the Olympics, she's going to be one of the stars. And just to know that she spent the last 3 years in Gainesville training, and, you'd see her around town or around campus. She
rocking
is
that Gator hat too, in the
wearing the Gator hat, which is pretty cool. And to me, I also love to see Anthony Nesty coaching the men's swim team.
Yeah, that's great.
He's about as much of a Gator as you can get. So it's cool to see him kind of get this opportunity.
Let me get you two erudite Florida people. Get your weigh in on the subject. Maybe this is reaching, maybe it's nothing, but President Sass stepped down due to his illness of his wife, and our thoughts and prayers go out to him and his family. And now we've got somebody returning that we know quite well. And I wondered if you thought, if that's going to be as an interim, he's the interim, if you thought that would be good for Florida, bad for Florida. They said they're still doing a national search. What's your take? Because, the old thing of thinking about programs. Of course, Dr. Fox has been around here a little while, and they voted unanimously to appoint him as the interim. And so I'm sure that was a relief. On the same token, he wasn't 100% aligned, it seems to me. Am I wrong, Allie, with some of the things to get the program that people wanted to see? Am I right about that, Allie?
That's the word on the street, right? Yeah. We don't know what goes on in these conversations behind closed doors, but I do know that it was it is believed that Sass was going to move the athletic department in the right direction because he really cared about sports
Right.
being dominant, and that maybe that wasn't always the case in the past regime. But I don't know what goes on behind closed doors. I don't know that he expects to be here long, right? They have a national search going on.
Yeah.
I would assume we're not going to have, an athletic director firing or anything like that happening during an interim president. I would assume we'll let whoever new leadership is make any decisions on those things going forward. But, I don't. Sometimes we look for something to point to when things aren't going the way we want them to.
Yeah.
I feel like.
Well, it can't hurt Scott Strickland. I mean, he has a previous relationship with Dr. Fox, and I think that will probably help him in that regard. But anyway, I don't know if maybe I'm grasping at straws. I don't want to put Scott in an embarrassing position of having to weigh in on the head man. Scott, what's the talk about the president's office?
Well, I think more than anything, it was a surprise, for Ben Sass to step away. I saw him as recently as the baseball postseason. I chatted with him briefly. Just I liked what he was doing. I really liked the way he connected. I think with the community, the college community had kind of a rough welcoming there, as we know, drawn along political divisions. But I thought he kind of started making his mark, and you just hope that his wife, her long-term health is good. But I did like what he's doing, and I also, have known Dr. Fox for a while. So I think Sass is probably more engaged with sports, as you guys saw. But also Fox was around long enough to where everybody at the UA knows him. They have a work relationship with him. So I do believe this is an interim position, and we'll see what they do there long term. But I don't think it's going to really impact anything athletically, while Fox is back. It's just, I think it caught a lot of people by surprise when Dr. Sass moved along.
Yeah, it did. Well, I mean, it could. Let's just say I'm not among those that think that Billy is going to be fired. I think he's going to survive. But if that should happen, now it really becomes important because the new president gets to pick the new coach. And that, we see how that could change things. So we'll see. Let me skip around to a couple other things before we get to football starting next week. Jack Caglione is now officially a Kansas City Royal. Agreed to terms, first round. He'll be playing with a guy named Bobby Witt. I don't know if you know about Bobby Witt. What a young player he is. Terrific. The Royals are really starting to come on. So Cags will be in the big leagues, in my opinion, in a short period of time. And it's going to be really interesting. And, of course, he's got Brady Singer, too, right, on that team. So all of a sudden, be some Royals fans in Gainesville, Scott.
Yeah, they have a nice – I mean, they're not doing too badly this season with their young team. So you throw someone in there like Caglione in the future. And I obviously mentioned Bobby Witt, who is clearly one of the 3 or 4 best young players, I think, in the majors right now. And I like that landing spot for Jack a lot. I thought that was a good pick. And Brady Singer's having a good year, so he has a Gator buddy there already built in. So, I've said this before. I'll say it again. I think Caglione is going to be a really good major league hitter. I think he's got a chance to do some special things. And at least in my opinion, he's the best baseball player the Gators have ever had. And I'm really curious to see what they do with his pitching, because they announced him as a two-way guy. That was important for him. So he's at least they're at least going to let him try to continue to still pitch in some capacity. So that's something to keep an eye on as well.
Yeah. The Royals are begging him to be a leadoff hitter. He leadoff hitter real bad, apparently. I don't follow the Royals that closely. So Ollie and I were just talking about the new number of scholarships that are allowed. All of a sudden, there's a whole bunch more. NCAA is, I don't know how many more. I got the numbers someplace, but a lot. And one of the great beneficiaries is the baseball program, who will now Sully's going to get a lot more scholarships. And Allie and I think that's terrific for the program and good for baseball, because baseball is going to start paying its own way soon, Scott.
Yeah, I think so. I think with where college athletics are, you're going to see more and more changes like this. I mean, it did make news this week with the expanded scholarships. And I heard what Allie was saying for some of the reasoning there, which is correct. I think it makes sense, from the new system that we're going into. But just for baseball specifically, that's something that, coaches have lobbied for decades. They're getting it probably in a way that few could have imagined 3 or 4 years ago. But I think it's going to modernize the system more, and it's going to create more lure for these players who are maybe on the border, because these college programs now, they have a lot better resources than the lower level minor leagues do.
Yeah.
Even the AAA. I mean, AAA, you're going to be instructed by probably a former major leaguer or someone who's really been around the game for a while, and play in a stadium in a city that may have 8 or 10,000 seats, but you're getting that on college campuses now, and the resources are so much better. So, and guess what? I know this gets lost sometimes, guys, but you can also get an education. I know.
What do you mean?
About that part.
Student athlete? Oh, I get you. Okay, yeah, I got you.
I've been told that some people
or some
go
people
to college.
Yeah, it's a novelty. What the heck? Go to college to get an education.
Yeah.
I want to get you both to weigh in on this. And how do you think, Allie and Scott, Florida Victorious is doing, and how do you think they're doing on their NIL deals? Allie?
I think Florida Victorious is doing a fantastic job. First of all, I think we're seeing them out publicly more in the last, let's say, 6 months than we ever have before. The stuff that they did around the spring game was incredibly impressive. You drive down I-75, you're looking at their billboards, their marketing campaign, just like the emails and the things that they have sent out have been consistent. They have been targeted. I really think that their marketing team has stepped their game up, and the amount of NIL deals that Florida is giving out
That's what I'm getting to,
is second to none. And it's not just what you think about when you think about NIL. It's not just the DJ Lagway Gatorade commercial. It's the gymnastics team. It's the softball players. It's women's basketball. It's baseball. It is across the board, across all sports, more impressive than it is anywhere else in the country, which is pretty damn cool.
I think you can thank Freddie Weeby for part of that. But
Absolutely.
Scott, what do you hear about it?
I like everything where it's going. I mean, I think it's been well documented that, Florida had some missteps at the start of the NIL era. And I think it was just more or less, maybe let's wait and see how this goes, and not really being proactive at the start.
Right.
But it was so quick to see what it was going to become in terms, there's some schools that hit the road with, hey, pay for play is here. We can finally do this more legally. Let's do it. That's not always been the way at a lot of schools, and it wasn't at Florida, obviously, but they quickly caught up. And I think the reshaping of the collective, going from the original organization now to the Gator collective, I think it's really going probably about as well as you could expect from where they started. And, it's still going to evolve in some ways that we probably don't see at this point. But I think just having good leadership up there, and obviously what the Gators are doing, these kind of deals are giving these athletes, they're right at the forefront of the market now. I mean, it's obvious. I think I saw something the other day where Florida has the most NIL student athlete deals of any
I got it
school.
right here. I got it right here from KFOR in Oklahoma City. It says that Florida has, now he didn't say the most money, is that the most NIL deals since March 2021. Using data from On3's NIL deal tracker, the group Just Gamblers compiled the list. Florida has led the way with 498 NIL deals since March 2021. Texas is next closest with 367. So there you go. That's it looks, and you couldn't have a better guy, in my opinion, than Freddie Weeby. He's amazing. If you know his story of how he put the restaurant together, how it's become such a way. By the way, they're celebrating their 3rd anniversary here pretty soon. Coach Spurrier and Freddie. Yeah. Anyway, so that money piece, as much as we hate talking about it, Allie, is so critical to what they're doing.
Yeah, it is. It is critical. And I think it's important to point out those 498, those are individual deals with athletes at Florida to represent a brand. This is not what goes on under the table to get recruits places, which I would conflate with. I would say that is absolutely pay for play, and it's taking place all over the country. This is like, hey, you're going to do a car dealership ad with Graham Mertz, or you like that Gatorade commercial that we mentioned. That's one of those 498. These are legitimate name, image, and likeness deals done in the spirit of we had in mind when we created NIL. And I think that's important to point out. It's not dropping McDonald's bags off to recruits' houses.
Yeah. I was kind of reminded of that last week when my middle daughter, she attended the Gators volleyball camp. And we walk in there and she meets the instructor, Lauren Harden, who's a freshman on the team. She was like her group's coach. And, she instantly liked her. My daughter did. And now she wants to buy her NIL stuff, which she gave us a little card, and you can scan the code. You can go to her little market. So that's a great, that's a great resource for those players and students to have to, kind of earn some extra income from their notoriety as a Gator. So that is the spirit, I think, of it. And in that way, I really like it.
At our gymnastics camp last summer, Leanne Wong was sitting there with her little bow shop and her mom making the bows and selling them to the little girls. And we had to have several of these overpriced bows because my children love them, and she made them. But then they wear them to the Gator meets, and they think it's so cool that they have a Leanne Wong bow in their hair as they're watching her compete. And it really does. It's the equivalent of like when we went to a football game. I went to a football game when I was 10 years old and caught a Jack Jackson wristband. It is still somewhere in this house, but it solidified that I was going to be a Gator for life. And I feel like these little NIL deals like this, but with some of the non-revenue generating sports, are creating lifelong fans in these kids for sports that maybe didn't have the same amount of appeal when we were kids, as they do right now. It's wild to see what NIL has done for the non-revenue generating sports. It's created an entire new generation of fans.
And I think the legacy part of this thing is starting to come into play. What a great story Vernell Brown III is.
So great.
Now you got Miles Graham. Now you got these sons of players lining up, Scott, to play as Gators. And it's just really, there's something about that feels so healing and so important to the program. It just bonds it. And especially when you get players like these guys, they're amazing students, they're amazing athletes, and it just feels like it's family, doesn't it, Scott?
Yeah, it's always great to have those legacy players come back, and then their kids now are playing. And, I think that's part of the college football, college athletics experience that is unique, obviously. So you do like to see that part stay intact. And it's good that we've got some recent reminders of that with Graham and Vernell's son. And, I was thinking Vernell was going to, his son was going to come to Florida, but you never know until they say it, right? When it's recruiting. So when he announced the other day, that was definitely a good day. And I remember seeing that kid around with his dad, several years now. So he's obviously grown up, and he's going to, I think, be a pretty good player. And he's one of those guys that you get him into the program, the learning curve is so much smaller for him. And I think that's always an advantage too when you get those legacy players.
Yeah. All right. Let me get to Stan if I can. And we've got standing by. We got Kyle Curtis should give us some updates on his series he's doing on rating the SEC teams. What did we learn from the recent SEC media days? There's a huge amount of information thrown at us, a lot of hype, but a few little things here and there. What's your one takeaway of a person or an incident or a player or something that you saw that you take with you from SEC media days? And Scott, you went up there for a while. Allie, let's start with you.
Well, first of all, I got the feeling that we are not expanding the SEC anytime soon, which I think is something, conference realignment is the most popular topic right now. out in the college football world. And it seemed pretty evident that the SEC is pretty good where they are at 16 teams, that they would be incredibly selective if they expanded past that, which, was interesting to hear for sure. I'm sure there was many Florida State tears cried over that. And then, if you talk about Florida's, appearance at media days, I think they continue to send the message that what they feel inside the program is different than the opinion outside the program. And they know that, and they're okay with that. And so it does kind of make you excited to see what they're going to put on the field in August.
Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I think, from the Gators' perspective, there wasn't a whole lot that I learned, but one thing that kind of perked up my ears was when Billy talked about just how much lean muscle the Gators have added since Tyler Miles took over.
500 pounds of muscle. And
whenever you say 500 pounds of lean muscle, and I know it's the roster, that's still a lot. So, that was one of those moments where, like I said, I raised my head up and like, oh, wow, that's pretty good. Yeah. And, not only that, I saw it firsthand the last couple of days over and stopped by the indoor facility. And you can just tell some of the guys, they look, we say this a lot of times, but you don't know if it's a big difference. I did notice a difference in some guys that I've seen in the last week. So I think that's a positive, obviously. But I do think if there was, I think Allie kind of hit it. That's what I had in my mind too, in terms of the big picture. It looks like the SEC is happy with 16 teams. And, I was talking to some national writers out there who I've known for a long time. And I didn't realize, we all know the disagreement right now between Florida State and the ACC, but I didn't realize how Florida State's on an island right now. I mean, obviously the Big 12 said we're not interested in taking you. Or the Big 10. So I mean, it's going to be really interesting to see how that plays out.
Imagine if they threw this big, huge fit to end up with similar money in the Big 12.
Yes, and it's just fascinating to see. It's almost like the president and those guys over there went ahead with calling out the ACC and filing this lawsuit after just meeting with some boosters who were obviously emotional. They're in a room, maybe. Sure. It's just like everybody got to let their emotions take over instead of really dialing down on what the big picture looks like. And they're in a very precarious place right now.
Yeah, they are.
Yeah, and I just want to say that I'm not going to. I've heard a rumor about Lagway's family. I'm not going to put it on the air until I check it out. But
it's not true. Okay. I did check it out. I saw it and I texted them. That is inaccurate.
Okay. Thank you. So the rumor that his dad died was not true. So that's good. Great. Great to hear that. All right. So my final one is going to say, here's what I took away from it. I thought Sankey did a marvelous job of keeping the cap on the all 16 family, not singling out the two new teams and so on. They did a great job. But it came out eventually, like day 2 or 3, Cole Kubelik and Jesse Dvorak got into a little bit of a scrap about what are the greatest rivalries in the SEC. And Dvorak, right off the bat, wanted to say the Red River rivalry. Well, Kubelik was having none of that. He says, look, the Iron Bowl would be hard to beat, for a rivalry. And so it was pretty testy there. You could see the division coming about because of where they came from. And you think this is going to play out at some point in time. It's going to. And then the next day they got a clip and came back on, and they had brought in Chris Doring. And they talked about what they said. And Doring said, well, what about Florida, Georgia? So now we're sort of all coming from different perspectives. We're seeing the difference in what the backgrounds are of the 14 and the 2.
Well, college football is nothing, guys, without some petty squabbles. So I love it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it too. The more insane, the better. And the SEC is its own brand of crazy.
It is. I'm going to let Scott say good night. Can you hang for a second, Allie?
Sure.
I want to tell folks that we're going to go good. get Kyle, I want to tell folks to remember, if you're in the market for good night, Scott.
Good night,
If you're in the
guys.
market for an MRI, I got a deal for you. You need to listen up, pay attention, because you're going to learn something here about it. If you have issues getting an MRI, you work, you can't get away, you can't get the hours to the point when you need it. Let's say you don't have insurance, you're kind of figuring out how you're going to pay for it. Titan MRI is somebody you should know about. Number one, they will custom make you an appointment, and you can come night, weekend, whatever, and accommodate you at your time. Number two, if you don't have insurance, you can pay with cash or card. It is not an exorbitant price, as you might think, so you can do that. And thirdly, they want you to have a good experience. Sometimes it can get a little dicey inside that little cubicle when you're doing that MRI. They're doing their best to see to it you don't get claustrophobic. So if you need a MRI, I highly encourage you in the Gainesville area, go check them out. TitanMRI.com. As we bring into the house one Kyle Curtis. Say good evening to Peek Wilbur.
Hey guys, thanks for letting me hang out with you guys for the last part of the show.
Hi Kyle, how are you?
I'm wonderful. How are you guys?
We're doing good. We've had a good discussion here. We need a little perspective from you as well. Allie is getting us straight. She's also still killing it with her Peek Inside the Gators podcast. She's got the HBC on for a couple of nights, and pick it up every time I turn on the social media, somebody else is writing about it. Spur your toe, Peek Wilbur. It's good job. So how are you doing, my friend? I think you're up to number 14 on your series?
Yeah, number 14. This week we're finally getting to a team that kind of had a little bit of a sour taste in Florida Gator fans the past few years, but long-term dominance, but hopefully we kind of get back on the right road this year. But I just wrapped that up. So getting down to the final few weeks here, I just saw, I was scrolling through Instagram earlier today and found a Gator hype video that kind of gave me chills from one of my classmates, and I was like, it's about that time.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I listened today. I was in before the Fun Bomb show. I was sitting here with my wife watching this. I thought, I'm sure look at this Saturday Down South series. Have you guys seen that?
Yeah.
For one thing, we're in it a couple of times. But secondly, I just they did a really nice job of part 8, wrapping up the end of what it means to these players, these small towns, and they had some writers on talking about it. Really, and you just get a warm fuzzy thinking, you know what, it is something special. Mm-hmm. Nothing like the SEC, at least the old one. There never will be, and because it's just not sports, it's culture, it's all the things. Allie, you grew up with it. To a lesser degree, Kyle, you did. And I kind of sat and thought, you know what? It's so cool to be covering a team in the SEC, isn't it?
The coolest job in the world.
It's amazing.
So is there one particular fun? I mean, you go back and you can't put it in perspective, and you realize how important Mississippi State and Ole Miss are in the Egg Bowl. Mm-hmm. At that one point, the one was ranked number 1 and one was number 3 in the country. Two teams that couldn't get out of their own way for years. Now these two teams for just a couple of weeks had all the glory coming their way. Ended up losing to Alabama and LSU, whatever. But the bottom line was, what a moment for them. Then, of course, it's always great to go back and relive the glory of the Gator days, how great we had it back then, right? And then you look at what Alabama and Georgia have done and what Kirby's done, and now Saban's gone. You think about how lucky were we to be covering the SEC when these coaches were coaching, because they don't come along like that very often,
The last 20 years of the SEC has been, so many cool storylines, so much dominance. Think about the big names we've gotten to watch during that past 20 years, from, Tim Tebow to Cam Newton to, it is incredible. It is the best conference in the best sport that there is.
And Kyle, as we were saying earlier, talking about the fact there's so many other sports now, and you always were a big baseball fan. Your good friend played for him, and you covered him for a couple of years. And and get to watch quality. Now I get to watch those games on TV. Basketball team now all of a sudden is beginning to make some noise. Todd Golden's got something going on there, pretty special. Track, forget about it. I mean, who's better? It's really, if you're a Gator fan and you live within 100 miles of Gainesville, and LA you do, and you get to enjoy that. You got two daughters who love gymnastics. I was sitting there thinking about the legacy athletes. I'm thinking, would it be cool if one of Allie's daughters, or both of them, made the Gator gymnastics team one day?
Well, I have one daughter who is convinced that she's going to punt for Florida. And, we haven't really gotten the logistics of this with her yet because she's not. The other day, she was like, Dad, do you think that you and Mom can move to Gainesville when I play football there in college? And he's like, yeah, sure, of course. Why? And she's like, because I don't know where I'm going to change. So maybe I'll change at the house. Drive me over to the game. And I was like, listen, if you punt for Florida, I'm pretty sure they'll figure it out for you. It'll be okay. But conversations.
Good for her. Good for her. How old is she?
House.
Yeah, how old is she?
She's 9. She's 9. And her twin wants to compete for Florida gymnastics. But Hayden is pretty convinced that she is going to punt for the Gators. So I don't think she even knows how to punt either, by the way. But
I think she might have a dad who might be able to help her a little bit.
She does. So she's convinced that at some point this, skill just comes out in her because she's inherited it. So
yeah, Kyle, when my oldest daughter was 11, I was at the St. Petersburg Times. We had a conversation. She got interested in baseball for a brief period of time. And she said, Dad, do you think one day girls will be able to pitch baseball? And I grew up, can I play in the major leagues? And I mentioned that one day when I first went to the St. Petersburg Times, and the promotions director went crazy. That's perfect. Let's do a promo on that. They took us out to the Mets camp. She had her picture made with Yogi Berra, Rusty Staub, Tom Seaver, and they made a full page of pictures with her with that quote, Dad, you think someday girls will be able to pitch baseball? So, that was her dream. Of course, she didn't. But I love that. Here's the thing about it, Allie. The way women's sports are going right now is crazy good. Now, almost anything is possible, right?
Yeah, it's true. Almost anything is possible.
There's been a few women kickers, I think, in the NCAA already. So you got to shoot for the start.
I think Vandy had somebody a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I mean, she's gonna have to learn this skill before then.
Yeah, you got to learn it.
College, but we're not gonna.
Don't burst your bubble.
We're not. We're gonna let this run.
Not yet.
Not yet.
Well, what would you like to do if you could go play? If you could pick any one thing in Florida or wherever, if you could go play as a young girl, Allie, what would you like to do?
Man, that's a great question. Honestly, if I could have done anything as a young girl, I would have coached football. But I would have coached it.
X's and O's.
Kyle and I would like to be on your staff if you get the job. Okay.
Yeah, I would love to.
I'm interviewing for the president position next week, so we'll.
Well, guys, it's always good to have you on. And hey, listen, one of the last weeks we're going to have a lot of talking live ball going on here next week. So we'll have some hopefully eyes and ears around fellows that I went there seeing and hearing. And Allie, thank you so much for being on again tonight. All the best to you and your family. And also Kyle Curtis, to you, my friend. Looking forward to part number 14. Did you tell us who it is? You didn't tell us, right?
Kentucky Wildcats.
Kentucky Wildcats. Okay. Well, remember what I said. It's your exercise. Break up the 16 teams in quadrants. All right, in quadrants. And you start thinking about who do I put in this quadrant, who do I put in that one. And you put those last 4 in there, it really gets hard. You say, who am I going to leave out? Who am I going to put in? And you kind of get a visibility because now you think, who are my top 4 going to be? Well, obviously you have 3 of them to figure out. But then you got to say, is it going to be Missouri, Oklahoma, my top 4? How's that going to play out? So you can kind of get a better idea and a feel for these teams by putting them in quadrants. Anyway, that's my idea. Next time we get on, we'll do that. All right, Kyle, good to see you. Allie, thank you so much. Have a good night, guys.
You guys have a good rest of your night.
Have a good night, guys. Cal.
Thank you. All right. Allie Peek
Yay.
Wilbur. Don't forget, Peek at the Gators and our podcast, and Kyle, of course, who writes for Gator Bay. I want to tell you, wind up the program by telling you about some good friends of ours, people who care, people who do a terrific job as patrons and stakeholders in Ocala and all their work that they do. The fact that they care so much about our community. They put their money where their mouth is with the company they've got there. And the fact is that they are also known for terrific medicine and helping us get healthier. For instance, how do we know what more we need in terms of treatment? We're all kind of leery about certain prescriptions. Do we need them? Do we not? What they do at Windstar Medical Research is they do these clinical research projects, and they'll bring in a group of people and they'll try out these new products. And some people will get the placebo and some people get the product. And they see how people respond to it. They record the results. They do these group studies and they send us this data off to some of these medical companies. And they determine more in our area what needs we have in terms of medicine. They're way always on the cutting edge of medicine. There are people you should get to know. They're good people. I've known them for a number of years. If you want to go by and see them, they're in downtown Ocala. I'll go to instar.net and find out. You may qualify for this. If you qualify for this study, they've had many, like 800 of them over the years. You could be entitled to special dispensation of medications you can't get out in the open market, or some medical devices. You definitely get qualified to get paid for your time and travel, and you're doing a good service. So our thanks to the people at Windstar Medical Research for what they do. Windstar Medical Research, seeking tomorrow's answers to the health questions of today. I want to thank everybody for their involvement in the show tonight. Certainly, Allie Peek Wilbur was one of my absolute favorites. She does a great job on her podcast. You jump over there and see it sometime. She gets big following. Of course, you know her background. Her whole family were Gators at some point in time. And of course, Scott Carter, who's always got good information. And our teammate, Kyle Curtis, who writes for Gator Bay. Thanks for them. Thanks for watching. And we'll catch you tomorrow night for the final show of the week. Don't forget, Ben Troop will be here. We'll have others that you might want to hear from on the Buddy Martin Show, Orange and Blue Bloods. Good night.